Total Screen proudly presents the Weekly Set Podcast with Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Episode 209, recorded June 8, 2019. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Set, the official podcast of the Total Screen. I'm your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at the Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So today, we are continuing what we started last week. We are exploring what could possibly be the next Game of Thrones. By that, of course, we just mean that it's going to be the next big water cooler show. Game of Thrones isn't the first show to be like that. Lost used to be like that. Breaking Bad used to be like that. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's a big fantasy show or something like that, something along those lines. So last week we focused on fantasy shows, but this week we're doing something a little different. We're going in the opposite direction while still sitting comfortably in the genre category, which is science fiction. So we went from swords and sorcery to lasers and robots. So, we're going to be talking about, I think we have 10 shows here on the list that we're going to go over and talk about 10 big upcoming shows. And we're going to give a little bit of details on them, talk about what we kind of maybe expect from them, what we think might be coming from them. And, that's going to be pretty much it for this week. So let's just get started right away. The first show we have to talk about is going to basically be the premier attraction of an entire streaming service.
Yeah.
That's going to be The Mandalorian, which is going to launch alongside Disney Plus later this year.
Obviously, this is Star Wars. For people not familiar with people not familiar with what a Mandalorian is, the Mandalorian, that's Boba Fett's race. That's what Boba Fett was. So this is not about Boba Fett, but this is about another bounty hunter, a Mandalorian. So similar to Boba Fett.
It's basically about Oberyn Martell, the space bounty hunter.
Yeah. which is actually like freaking bad. I'm actually excited for this because how much Star Wars media do you get that doesn't focus around the Jedi and the Sith and that eternal struggle? How often do you get there's so much to this universe that
they explore the lore and all the other stuff that's going on rather than just the Skywalker story.
Exactly. That's what makes this more interesting to me than if they put a Luke Skywalker show on here or what the fuck ever. This is much more interesting because not only that, but you got a lot of the Star Wars, it's about good and evil. You got a main character who is more neutral, he's good and he's bad. So you got a lead character who is a bit morally ambiguous. So that's more interesting too.
What I find most interesting is just the people involved in this. So before the cast is fucking phenomenal, and we'll go over some of them. But besides even that, this is being brought to us by Jon Favreau, who directed Iron Man, wrote and directed the first Iron Man movie that kicked off the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Which of the big epic Disney properties that rule geekdom, I think MCU is much better than where Star Wars is right now.
Right.
And so having one of the people that basically kicked off the MCU, involved in this as the showrunner for this series and really pushing it, that's exciting to me. But it's not just him. We had already mentioned Pedro Pascal is in this series, who was phenomenal as Oberyn Martell in Game of Thrones. He's also, he's great at everything he's in.
We know he can play a badass.
Yes.
Basically, I loved how Oberyn Martell just showed up in Game of Thrones and immediately stole the show.
Oh yeah, completely. He was so needed. That's the thing I always bring up about Oberyn Martell. He became my favorite character, or one of my favorite characters, almost instantly, just because he was the exact thing that you needed.
Yeah,
you had this family, the Lannisters, that were just so out of control, and you needed somebody to put them in check.
Yeah, you need somebody.
Oberyn Martell, Yeah,
here comes Oberyn Martell. He was going to put the Lannisters in their fucking place, and that's what made what happens that much more crushing, soul crushing. It was God damn you, Game of Thrones.
Yeah, so it's like Pedro Pascal he's charismatic, he's amazing, and pretty much everything he's doing, since Game of Thrones, he's just had like a massive career boost. He's been like popping up in all sorts of things. He was in the second Kingsman movie that was really good. He's going to be in the new Wonder Woman movie. Was it Wonder Woman 1984 or something like that? The one
1980 something.
Yeah, it's the one that takes place in the 1980s, the new one, basically. But he's going to be in that. He had that show Narcos on Netflix that was really good about Pablo Escobar. He's a great actor and has had a phenomenal career growth since Game of Thrones. But his career goes also all the way back to stuff like he had a big role in an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, okay.
One of his early roles.
Oh.
It's weird to think of, but it's true. It was just a one episode role, but it was like a pretty significant one. There was an episode where Buffy was basically fighting a vampire in a graveyard through like the whole episode.
Okay. I think I vaguely remember that episode.
And he was the vampire she was fighting. So it's like that's kind of where he really got his start and people started paying attention to him. But it took Game of Thrones for him to just become like huge. And so yeah, he's a great one, but he's far from the only like great presence on here. Gina Carano, who's a MMA fighter, you might have recognized her in the Deadpool movie. She's going to be in this as a former Rebel shock trooper. Carl Weathers, Carl Weathers is in this.
I was going to say, that's not correct. It's Carl motherfucking Weathers.
Yeah, from Predator and Rocky, of course. He played Apollo Creed and Rocky.
The dude is a legend. It's amazing he's in this.
Yeah, it's so great. Omid Abtahi, if you've watched American Gods, he plays Salim in American Gods. He's kind of another kind of similar story to Pedro Pascal, but not quite to the same scale, where like he's kind of was like an obscure face you'd see every so often, is now popping up a lot more. How about this? Taika Waititi, the director, writer, and occasional like voice actor and one of the character stars in Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, it looks like he's doing a voice for a droid IG-11,
which is just awesome. One thing that Star Wars has been doing right, like the new Star Wars stuff that's been coming out, has been like the droid guest voices.
Yes.
That they've had. Like Rogue One had God, what's his name from Firefly? I can't even think of the actor's name right now. I'm just brain farting out, but like just perfect fix, Taika Waititi playing a droid is like, that's awesome. I can't wait to see that. But beyond that, in some roles that we're not even sure on who these people are playing, but look at some of these other people that are in this. Frickin' Nick Nolte.
Star Wars now that it has that cultural cachet where they can get big names to sign up to do this stuff because it's Star Wars and it's fun and it's pretty much guaranteed, like if an actor signs on to do it's not going to be crap, that's a worry like actors have a lot of times, like, oh, if I sign up, it's going to be garbage. It's like Star Wars has that reputation now where, there's going to be care put into it.
There's a few other people in this. I don't have to name all of them, but there's three more I definitely want to name. Giancarlo Esposito, Gus Fring from Breaking Bad. That's fucking amazing. Werner Herzog, who's like just a legendary director, is going to be as an actor in this.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Bill Burr, the comedian, he's kind of quickly becoming like the next like it comedian,
Yeah, I see him a lot more often these days. So it looks like he's rising up.
So he's going to pop up. Things like Taika Waititi and Bill Burr, those are the kind of things that really excite me about this, because that tells me this show is going to have levity.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what makes me like really psyched for it. So yeah, Mandalorian that's the reason to get Disney Plus, basically.
From the write-up and everything, it looks like this is basically going to be a Sergio Leone style spaghetti western set in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I frequently say that I just don't care about Star Wars anymore. This is like, to me, is an exception.
Well, see, this is why, because they don't do this with Star Wars.
Exactly. This is so great. This is everything that Star Wars should be doing, but like isn't.
Right, exactly. And that's why I'm more excited about this than if it was like another, Jedi versus Sith type thing, because we get that from the movies, we get that. It's like, it's nice to be able to explore explore other things in this universe.
Here's one other cool thing. The last thing I'll bring up about this is that the 501st Legion, which is like a cosplay group before cosplay was a word, really.
Uh-huh.
Would always dress up as stormtroopers for like going to Comic-Con and stuff like that. They're in this playing stormtroopers.
Nice.
That's just a cool little thing. Like they said like, hey, we need like tons of people in these extras and these roles and stuff. Let's go grab like a, cosplay group that's known for this and just bring them on, why not? Things like that. It's like, that's cool. That's reaching out to fans, the people that are most excited and saying, hey, why don't you be a part of this too? So that's just awesome. This is like, man, this is the reason to get Disney Plus. I think I'm probably still more excited about the MCU stuff coming to Disney Plus, but that's like on the horizon. This is like at launch. This is the reason to get the streaming service at launch. Much better value proposition than Titans, I can say that much. So next up, Cowboy Bebop.
Okay. This is obviously I'm mixed on this. I need to see it before I get excited. Because you know how like, adaptations of Japanese anime and manga typically go.
This had been long in development as a movie.
Yeah, they're trying to get Keanu Reeves.
Like exciting.
Yeah.
And so there's that little disappointment edge there of like, man, Keanu Reeves as Spike would have been so cool kind of thing that like was exciting about it. And, as it's been in development hell and hasn't pushed forward, of course, Keanu Reeves just is getting older and it's making less and less sense. So then we knew that project was falling apart.
Well, I guess we should introduce what the hell Cowboy Bebop is. Cowboy Bebop is an anime, from Japan. It was created by Shinichiro Watanabe. And it's hard to describe. Well, it's about bounty hunters in space in the future, and they're ostensibly going about the universe and collecting bounties. But it's an interesting show because there's a strong emphasis on music. Music, like the show's themes are some of the best, and
jazz in particular, not just music.
Jazz in particular, and it's a very good show.
Yes.
It's one of like the best.
Strong characters.
Yeah.
It's actually got like a really strong story, like a background story for Spike.
Yes.
Except it's like only part of maybe like 3 or 4 episodes in the entire series.
Yeah, most of the episodes in the series are actually self-contained. So you could pretty much watch any random episode and get a full story out of it.
If a character named Vicious pops up, then that means it's part of the, actual story.
Yeah, Spike's background story. But yeah, you're like, that's like only 3 or 4 episodes. And like most of the episodes are self-contained stories where they're like, some shit is happening. But they're all good. They're all good. Like the thing knocks it out of the park with like every episode. Seriously. Mm-hmm. It's one of the greatest anime of all time. I have no qualms about saying that. Don't at me. It's just amazing. And like I said, it's unique, and I'm kind of don't know how its uniqueness is going to translate to a live action show on Netflix. But we'll have to see. The cast is decent. I guess I can't complain about the casting. We still don't have casting for Ed.
Yeah, Ein and Ed, we still don't know.
Yeah, Ein and Ed, we still don't know, which is, I hope we know soon, because I can't imagine they're going to do this show without Ed. That'd be such a weird decision.
They said Ed's going to be in it. It's probably going to be an unknown, because it has to be a young actor,
Yeah, yeah.
So it's probably going to be an unknown, like where it won't really matter that who's doing it, except for maybe what they look like,
But yeah, I don't.
Kind of going against type a little bit here. Spike Spiegel is being played by John Cho. In the show, he's very lanky and stuff. That's why people really like the idea of Keanu Reeves as him.
Yeah, he's very tall. He's very lanky.
Guy,
Yeah, Spike is like this cool, like laid back. Well, like he puts on an air of being like laid back and carefree. It's interesting. John Cho can definitely act, so I'm
Cho a lot. It's just a weird role.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about that. Like, I'm not concerned about the casting so much. It's just, I don't know, it's hard to say because we have no information about this except for like the casting that they announced. We know
that the showrunner and the person who's adapting is Christopher Yost. Mm-hmm. He's a comic book writer. He's done a lot for like the X-23 comics at Marvel. That's kind of one of his areas where he's written a lot on. But if you read comics, Christopher Yost, he's the guy that's adapting this.
Yeah. Like I said, we don't know anything about this. I can't have an opinion until I actually see something from this.
So some of the other cast members to go over real quick, Mustafa Shakar playing Jet Black. He was kind of last seen in season 2 of Luke Cage, where he played Bushmaster. He stole the show on Luke Cage. So that's a kind of exciting. He played kind of a villain in Luke Cage, but kind of, a little bit like a sympathetic villain. Seeing him as Jet Black, a character that's very not villain at all, who's like a very like kind, good person.
Jet Black is that cop in cop movies where he's basically going around going, I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah.
That's Jet Black.
But, he's too old for this shit, but he's also like too good of a person to let somebody he cares about be in a dangerous situation alone.
Exactly. He is honorable. His backstory is he used to be a cop and then he quit and became a bounty hunter because of corruption. He's too honorable of a person to engage in any type of corruption or anything. So he became a bounty hunter.
Yeah. So I think he'll be interesting to see Mustafa Shakar in that role because he's a good actor and he's very charismatic. He's very likable. What I wonder is he going to steal the show from John Cho because he is super charismatic? Because that would be kind of a little different than the anime where Spike Spiegel is kind of this very, stoic, cool guy that like, he doesn't say much, but he kind of steals the show,
Yeah.
He kind of steals the scene all the time.
Spike steals the scenes because he is dude that is cool and everything.
So it's going to be interesting to see like the chemistry between John Cho and Mustafa. That's what's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, because the chemistry between Spike and that was a big part of the show. The chemistry between Spike and Jet.
Yeah.
Was a big part of the show.
Another big character, of course, is Faye Valentine. This time it's going to be played by Daniela Pinata. I had just recommended to you a show called The Detour because you were talking about not having enough comedies. Before we started this podcast, we were talking about comedies and all the ones that are ending. And I said, well, you should check out The Detour. It's going on its either like 3rd or 4th season soon. Daniela Pinata, she plays the sister of the wife in The Detour. And she's like a hot mess. She's just like always like such a mess. She's like the sister that just does not have her life together and is constantly fucking up and getting involved in stupid ass shit. And that seems almost perfect for Faye Valentine. Cause Faye Valentine's kind of the same way. She's just kind of like stumbles into problems, So that's kind of interesting casting there. She's not super well known, but it's a very similar role, I think, except The Detour, it's more comedic than it would be in Cowboy Bebop, which is still somewhat comedic, but Detour is a straight up comedy.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for Cowboy Bebop. That's like with any anime adaptation especially for live action, it's always a matter of, let's see what happens. Let's hold our breath, But of the ones that we know of that are in development for like movies and TV and other things, Cowboy Bebop might just have the best chance of actually being good.
We will see. We will see. I don't know. I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical until I see it and it's good.
You're skeptical but optimistic?
Yeah, let's just say that.
So let me ask you, Will, are you a fan of Halo?
It's alright.
I was never much of a fan of Halo.
I played the games. They're okay.
But one thing I do know is that Halo has had a historic, like, its history of being pursued as like a film.
Yeah,
it's pretty legendary.
They're trying to get some kind of adaptation of this, like, made forever, and it just...
Peter Jackson was making a big push for it. He didn't want to direct it, but he wanted it made. He worked with Guillermo del Toro to try to get it made. That fell through. He worked with Neil Blomkamp to get it made. That fell through.
It's weird how doomed this thing has been.
Yeah.
And so when I heard Showtime was making Halo, my first thought was, okay, how long until this is revealed that's going nowhere?
That doesn't seem to be the case, though. I mean, now it's got a Shepard and Steven Spielberg as a producer.
Steven Spielberg was the producer. I remember when they announced the Xbox One and Microsoft announced that they were going to do original television. And as part of that initiative, they announced a Halo show executive produced by Steven Spielberg.
It's the same show. It's just it's moved around.
Okay. I figured because, that didn't materialize and Microsoft mysteriously canceled all their television programs and their entire television initiative.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay. Yeah, and then
the showrunner on this is interesting. It's Kyle Killen. He hasn't had a great record of success, but he's a good writer. And, he did a series called Awake. Did you ever see that?
I saw like the pilot.
The pilot episode for Awake is amazing. It's like one of the best pilots I've ever seen, I think. But the series itself as a whole is a good series too. But the pilot's like, you can just watch that as a short film with like no other context and it's great.
Right.
He's going to be the showrunner for this. That's interesting. He's not exactly an action guy. So he's like a straight up drama writer and like a really good one. So it'll be interesting to see how that translates to something that's very likely be more of an action series.
Drama.
This is also the pilot for this series is going to be directed by Adat Bathurst, who did the first episode ever of Black Mirror, the national anthem. Everybody knows it as the pig fucking episode.
Interesting.
So if you've heard of that episode of Black Mirror, it's the very first episode of Black Mirror. He's going to be directing the pilot episode for this. So that's an interesting combination of people there. You got a Black Mirror director and you have a really good drama writer on an action series based on a first-person shooter video game. But let me throw one more name in here. Pablo Schreiber. Cool. He was in American Gods. He played Mad Sweeney. He was in The Wire.
Oh, okay. That's right. He's playing Mr. Chief.
Mr. Chief. Yeah. That's his father's name. He calls himself
Master Chef. He's playing Master Chef.
But yeah, he's been in American Gods, he's been in The Wire, he's been in Orange is the New Black. He's a good get as well. He was, he was kind of a bit of in Orange is the New Black, where he kind of first kind of became more of a known entity. He was kind of I don't know what's the word, like a paper thin farcical kind of character. But in The Wire, he wasn't. He was like a really three-dimensional fleshed out character. And in American Gods, he was more like, he wasn't realistic or anything, but he was interesting,
You know what? This finally puts a face to Master Chief. We don't have an image of who he is, but now he's being played by this guy.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting, and, if you don't know much about Halo, it's basically about a super soldier in space fighting against an ancient alien threat. That's pretty much it. It was just an excuse to have, like...
Halo is a pretty cool guy who is cool and doesn't afraid anything. That's the plot synopsis of the series.
Yeah. I can give you the plot synopsis of GoldenEye.
Yeah.
GoldenEye is a knight hat is golden.
Yes.
But that's Halo. If you loved Halo, you're probably very well aware of this series. If you don't, like me, the people attached to it are making me somewhat interested. Like, I don't care at all about the video game Halo, but the people attached to this are kind of making me a little bit interested. Next up, we have Another Life. This is a series on Netflix. It is created and run by Aaron Martin, who worked on Degrassi, The Next Generation, Being Erica, and Slasher. Not necessarily great credits that inspire a super lot of confidence.
I don't know what this is at all. Yeah, none of those credits make me excited. So,
but the cast. So the cast has some heavy hitters in it. Katie Sackhoff from Battlestar Galactica, who she played Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica. Great. She's playing Nico Breckenridge. She's the main character in it. Selma Blair from Hellboy is playing Harper Glass, another character in it. Tyler Hoechlin from Supergirl, he plays Superman in Supergirl.
He does a good Superman.
Yes, he's in it. Justin Chatwin, the immortal Goku from Dragon Ball Evolution, the live action.
Oh, the best Goku?
Yes. No, he was in Shameless and Orphan Black. He was in a Christmas special of Doctor Who. He's a good actor. He just picked a very bad role for that one. But yeah, this is basically the plot it's an astronaut and her crew as they search for alien intelligence after the discovery of an artifact of alien origin.
That could be good. I don't know. Have to see something from it.
I'm mostly excited because of Katie Sackhoff.
I guess.
Katie Sackhoff Sackhoff and Selma Blair are also big gets. The two of them together are a pretty big get.
Right.
The creator of the show itself doesn't necessarily inspire a ton of confidence, but I mean, if you looked at the credits of like, D.B. Wise and David Benioff, it wouldn't exactly make you go, man, Game of Thrones is going to be epic.
That's true. Thankfully, I had the pleasure of going into Game of Thrones completely blind with like zero expectations. It was just like a thing that was on, like the pilot was just a thing that was on, and I said, yeah, well, we checked this out. And that was it. That was the story. That was like, after that first episode, that was like, zoom. I was like, okay, this is a thing. I gotta watch this now.
The thing to remember whenever you see names attached to a show or something, and like some of the projects they've done in the past, writing is a job.
Right, exactly.
Just because he wrote on Degrassi doesn't mean that that's the end of his ambition. That doesn't mean that that's what he wanted to write, He could have always been very sci-fi minded, always been in that direction, but he just did what he had available to him, Names become more important to pay attention to when they have done something notable, because then you really have seen what they're made of, what they're really involved in. And that's when it's more exciting to go like, oh, okay, Brian Fuller's doing this show. Oh, wow. Okay. I need to see this, because he's proven himself at that point.
Right. He's proven himself. Like
Aaron Martin has proven himself enough to get a show to the people within the industry, but he hasn't really made a name for himself.
So maybe he'll make a name. Like, same thing with like Steven Ested. Like anything Steven Ested Knight does, I have to like check out now.
Yeah.
But so maybe he'll make his name with this.
Yep. It's just like I said, the names that are established here that are worth paying attention to are like Katie Sackhoff and Selma Blair. Yeah, those are some big names, especially in sci-fi.
To illustrate your point, Brian Fuller started out writing episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager. Yeah, actually he only did like 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine, and he did like 22 episodes of Voyager. Voyager is considered a crap Star Trek show. You wouldn't know Brian Fuller wrote heavily for that show, and if you judge Brian Fuller based on a Star Trek Voyager, you probably wouldn't be excited about like
Hannibal.
Hannibal.
Which is like one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Yeah. Or like he also did the teleplay for the Carrie TV movie, apparently. So yeah, you wouldn't be like, you probably wouldn't think like this guy was like anything great, but give him a chance, and they gave him a chance and he blew people away.
Yeah. And now he's like a household name. So you never know who's going to end up like that. Speaking of another person who blew up and became like that, J.J. Abrams. He has tons of shows in development always. He's at that stage in his career where he can basically just help other writers get stuff started. But This show, Contraband, which used to be under the code name Demimonda at HBO, isn't something that he just started up with something. This is something that he started developing on his own and then started bringing other people in.
Oh, that's a true. Yeah, J.J. Abrams is like one of those he's one of those names now, like they slap his name prominently on anything he's like tangentially related. If he like pitched the idea and then walked away, they'll put his name in the headline.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is an example where he actually was heavily involved in the development of this. Probably the most he's been involved in a TV show since like Lost, which again, he didn't run Lost, but he really helped develop it,
Right. Yeah, he did. He helped develop it. He wasn't involved in the day-to-day or like the show running decisions,
But he helped make it what it is, So this series is expected to be run by Bathsheba Doran, who recently did The Looming Tower at Hulu, has a few other credits, kind of small credits, nothing that really, again, inspires a ton of confidence and stuff. But this is somebody that was basically handpicked by J.J. Abrams to take over a project that he himself developed and started.
It's interesting that this was, so you said like Apple made a bid for this, and HBO actually won out.
Yes. This was several people made bids on this, and then most notably Apple made a pretty significant bid on this. HBO, of course, also has money to bid on things, and they have a good relationship with J.J. Abrams. Westworld, for example, is a J.J. Abrams produced series.
Oh, that's right. produce that.
So yeah, so they have a pretty good relationship with him. This project has been hotly sought after, and it's been very secretive. Basically, the next line of dialogue I'm about to read is all we know about it. It's described as an epic and intimate sci-fi fantasy drama about a world's battle against a monstrous force. That's it. That's all we know.
It sounds like it could be good. It's another thing. I have to see it first before I form an opinion.
J.J. Abrams is super secretive about his stuff.
Yeah, he is.
So you just don't know.
I remember the marketing campaign behind the original Cloverfield. Nobody knew what the fuck Cloverfield was until it was basically in theaters.
Yeah. So this is going to be like a typical J.J. Abrams thing. The difference here is that where a lot of the projects, he just kind of like we mentioned, he just kind of slaps his name on it, mainly to help other people he knows get shit made. Like he'll know a writer, the writer has a project, the writer says, hey, I'm trying to get this made, and J.J. Abrams goes, okay, I'll slap my name on it, and then that'll get you through the door to get this made at wherever you're going, basically. This isn't the case with Contraband. With Contraband, this is something that he himself developed. And then he picked a showrunner who's a relative unknown, but picked the showrunner himself to kind of take over this project. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, last time he did that was Lost. So that speaks well for me. Some people have issues with Lost. To me, Lost is the greatest show ever made. That's just the way I always see it, you know? So that's something I'm excited about. I want to see what this is. It's also HBO, which has a very strong track record of not picking losers, you know?
Sure.
Next show we have up here, Ringworld. So have you ever read or heard of the Ringworld book series?
I've heard of Ringworld. Haven't read it. I don't know what it's about, really.
So it's basically, I mean, I haven't read them myself, but it just, from going over some details, it centers on the exploration of just a massive alien construct in outer space. And so they're just exploring that, and there's all sorts of other different stories going on related to that. It's a very famous sci-fi novel series from the 1970s, by Larry Niven. So this is one picked up by Amazon, who has basically decided that they want to own fantasy and sci-fi outright.
Yeah.
If you noticed on our fantasy episode last week, where we're going over like half the shows on there were from Amazon.
Amazon wants to dominate. Yeah,
the same thing's happening here again. Amazon is really making a huge investment, probably even more than in fantasy, with science fiction. They don't have Lord of the Rings, but they do have like tons of different sci-fi shows. And it's not even just these big sci-fi shows. They also picked up The Expanse, which is a beloved known entity.
Sure.
So that was canceled by Sci-Fi, and Amazon picked it up. Apparently Jeff Bezos had wanted to pick that up before Sci-Fi even got it. And he didn't have direct control of his own division for content acquisition, and he was rather pissed when he found out that they didn't get that.
Oh, really? Oh,
so
wow.
when the show ended up getting canceled, he just stepped in like light speed and just picked that series right up.
He saw the opportunity to have what he wanted that he failed to get before.
Yes. And so there's an arguable point here, because it's been stated that Jeff Bezos is actually just a big fan of the books. So is this an issue of like him thinking, wow, this is going to be great for our service, or just, I want this made. I want to watch this show.
Yeah, right?
I'll invest millions because I have billions.
Just an ultra rich guy investing in like his fantasy, like vanity project, just having a show be made just because he wants to watch it.
Yeah. So that's The Expanse, which isn't one of the shows that we're really talking about today, but you kind of have to talk about it when we start talking about the Amazon shows in development, because they lean heavily into the sci-fi and fantasy categories. And The Expanse is part of that. This is part of a new push that Amazon's going to be making. Right now, you look at like the streaming service providers, and Netflix just dominates everything handily. They put out like 6 to 8 shows a week, you know, it's just constantly new shows coming out. And nobody else can really compete with that amount of output. Amazon has done a few good things. They've had like some good series here, some good series there, but they're kind of spaced out. But in setting up this list of what could be the next Game of Thrones for the fantasy fantasy and the sci-fi and all these other ones, man, Amazon has a lot of shows in development right now. It's blowing up big. And they're not just investing in shows like this Ringworld that's coming here based on, famous science fiction novels, but they're also going like, hey, The Expanse got canceled. We're picking that up. That's going to be on ours, Originally I had on the list, I guess I had bad information, but the 3-body problem, because there was a huge rumor going around that I thought was confirmed, but it turned out not to be the case, that Amazon had actually spent $1 billion on the rights to this Chinese science fiction novel series alone. It turns out that they tried to bid $1 billion on this, but the rights were already owned by a Chinese studio.
Oh, so Amazon doesn't have this.
Amazon does not have the 3-body problem. I removed that from the list because of that. It's not being made as a TV series, but Amazon tried to buy the rights for $1 billion.
Right.
Just for the rights. That's more than they spent on Lord of the Rings. That's double what they spent on Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy, man.
So that shows you how much they want to invest in science fiction. So that's Ringworld is what we're talking about. We kind of went off and talked about a few other things, but let's talk about another Amazon series.
Sure.
And that's The Peripheral. This is based on a novel by William Gibson, the author of Neuromancer and various other cyberpunk series. He's kind of like the name in cyberpunk fiction.
Looks like he also did Johnny Mnemonic. Well, it says movies.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if that was based off of one of his novels, but
I think it was. Johnny Mnemonic was based on. That was Keanu Reeves. It was an okay movie, but it was one of like the first cyberpunk movies.
Yeah, it was. It was like really like this. It was like 90s cyberpunk. When like the internet and stuff was starting to become popular. So I'm sure if I watched it today, it'd be very much like 90s, like techno geek cringe.
This one is actually, what's interesting about The Peripheral at Amazon isn't just that it's William Gibson, which is a big name, but that this is being adapted by novelist Scott B. Smith alongside Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, who are the showrunners of Westworld.
Mm-hmm.
So this is their next project. They've kind of like stepped down some of their duties on Westworld. They've kind of made it so that Westworld's going like every other year, and they've kicked up this other project that they're working on.
So this could be cool. This could also be really confusing, because
Westworld is.
Yeah.
The book is supposed to be pretty confusing too. It's got like a non-linear narrative, they say.
Oh god, this is perfect for Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy then. Holy cow. Prepare to be mind fucked.
The story is about time travel and dystopia at the hands of a massive corporation.
Well, you know what? I mean, it sounds like a good premise, and it sounds like with the people behind it sounds like they could do something really great.
Playing around with time is going to be.
Playing around with time is
new for the creators of Westworld.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to be nothing new. There's going to be some fuckery. So definitely that's interesting. That's one that's going to be interesting, I think, to keep your eye on.
That's like an HBO caliber project right there.
Yeah.
It's going to be in development at Amazon. So that's one to pay attention to. This next one, this has been a hotly anticipated adaptation for a long time. They've been trying to do this.
Based off of an Eisner Award-winning comic published by DC under their Vertigo imprint, I believe.
Yes, this is Y, The Last Man is the comic book, and the series is simply being called Y. It's based on Y, The Last Man by Brian K. Vaughan.
And if you haven't heard of Y, The Last Man, the concept is basically a disease wipes out every male on Earth except for...
Not even just humans, just period.
Yeah,
every
just period.
male.
Except for our main protagonist and his monkey are the two last living males on the planet.
And you can imagine that's just gonna straight up turn into some weird shit.
Yeah, I haven't read like all the comic, but it does lead to some like weird situations because now like this guy's in a world where like women are completely in control. It won an Eisner. It's very interesting doing the show today in this climate that we have now. I expect some very heavy Me Too commentary.
Well, it's going to be interesting because a lot of women will complain that there aren't a lot of roles in Hollywood for them. Here's basically every character except one has to be female.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, if you're a female actress, look into Y, The Last Man, because they need a lot of females to flesh out their cast. But yeah, Why the Last Man, hotly anticipated, very popular, very lauded, critically lauded, comic book that it's based on, has been in kind of development hell off and on for ages. They've been trying to develop this. They finally made it stick somehow, but there's a caveat to that, and that's that the way they were able to make it stick was with Michael Green came aboard. Michael Green was the co-showrunner of American Gods with Brian Fuller. He's done a ton of stuff. Like in around the time he did American Gods, he just was like a workaholic. He did, what was it? The new Blade Runner movie. He wrote that. He did like a bunch of movies and different TV shows and stuff. He kind of had his name attached to everything. He came on as the main showrunner. He brought on a co-showrunner to work with. Unfortunately, they have both left the project due to creative differences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard.
The series is still being made, though.
Yeah, I heard the series is still being made, but yeah, there's been some creative problems, so we'll have to see how that works itself out.
Yeah. We do know some of the cast. Barry Keoghan, who was in Dunkirk and the recent Chernobyl, which is like, you know, what everyone's talking about right now on TV, is going to be playing York Brown. He's the one male character in the show. Diane Lane, the famous Diane Lane from Unfaithful, The Outsiders, Trumbo, Cinema Verite. She's going to be playing York's mother, Senator Jennifer Brown. Imogen Poots from That Awkward Moment in I Kill Giants. And 28 Weeks Later, she's going to be playing York's sister, Hero Brown. And Lashana Lynch, who was in Captain Marvel. She played what's her name? Carol Danvers' best friend.
Okay.
Can't remember her name, the character's name, but played her in Captain Marvel. She plays Agent 355, who's a big character in the comics as well. So yeah, that's Why the Last Man. It's a huge project. It's got a lot of attention on it, and it has a big caveat of the showrunners leaving, which is not always a great sign, you know, but who knows? I mean, if they get the right showrunner on board, they can make things work. I mean, The Walking Dead's been through like 5 showrunners already, and it didn't become a mega hit until they were on like their 3rd or 4th. So that kind of, it tells you, you know, like it's not a good sign when a showrunner leaves, but it also doesn't mean that it's doomed. Sometimes things just don't work the way that they were originally being developed. But we'll have to see what ends up happening with that. That's Why the Last Man, or just Why on FX. Next up, we have East of West. This is another series from Amazon. This one based on an Image comic by Jonathan Hickman. And the series is being produced by Skybound Entertainment, which is Robert Kirkman's company that he was started up to do basically his own projects, but also ended up getting involved with other projects as well. This takes place in a dystopian America on the edge of apocalypse, in which the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse might be our salvations, might be our salvation.
Right.
It's being billed as a sci-fi Western fantasy drama. So basically they just checked all of the above when it came to genre. So yeah, do you know much about this comic?
No. I don't think I've ever heard of it. You know, I haven't been following comics too much in recent years. So if it's a more recent comic book, I'm not familiar. I would need to get back into it.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of critical attention to it, but it's not huge, you know?
It sounds interesting. It's sci-fi, Western, you know, fantasy.
Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Yeah, Horsemen of the Apocalypse sounds interesting. I'd definitely, give it a shot. I'd check it out for sure.
It's the kind of thing that, like, I don't know, like, it seems like it would be in the same vein, maybe not like in the ridiculous comedic way, but like in the just kind of genre blending way of something like Preacher. And with Preacher coming to an end with its next season, like East of West might be like something that kind of comes in and fills that void.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
So I don't really know much about it. I don't know if it's got like a lot of levity to it like Preacher does, or if it's more serious, but
Jonathan Hickman is a really good writer.
Okay.
He is a really good writer. So, you know, so this has the potential to be really good.
And the last one on our list here might be my favorite, might be the one that I'm most looking forward to on this whole list.
Yeah, I love the concept.
And it's mostly just because of who's involved and in what capacity. And the series is called The Nevers. It's coming to HBO. This is Joss Whedon, not just attaching his name to something. He's going to be showrunning.
Right. This is like the first series he's showrun since, if I'm not mistaken, since Dollhouse, like
yes.
Way back.
Yes, it's the first thing he's done since Dollhouse, which was a misfire. Dollhouse was a misfire, but you know what? I actually still like Dollhouse. I watched all of
it. Yeah, it's still better than most shows that get put on TV. So
yeah, it had some problems, but it also had a lot of good aspects.
So I'm excited for Joss Whedon's return to making his own shows. You know, he's got Jane Eppenson and Doug Petrie on there. You know, they're both veterans of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So Jane Eppenson is like really great.
He's the showrunner for was it Buffy and Angel, I think, at different points.
Yeah, at different points. Yeah, you're right. So he's got them on board. So I'm expecting a very classic Buffy type, Buffy the Vampire Slayer type tone about this.
Witty dialogue.
Yeah, witty dialogue. You know,
heavy metaphors,
kick-ass women. This is gonna be. I definitely think this is gonna be a treat for people who are old school Joss Whedon fans.
Here's the tagline for the series. It says, epic science fiction drama about a gang of Victorian women who find themselves with unusual abilities, relentless enemies, and a mission that might change the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting, very Joss Whedon sounding. And like I said, more than anything, I'm just super psyched that we have Joss Whedon back showrunning again.
Yeah, me too.
Where he belongs. But this time on HBO. He's always done it for like network TV. This is his first time doing anything outside of network, which means, you know, shorter seasons, more quality control, you know, probably bigger budgets than he's ever worked with before. And on top of all of that, more creative freedom and more support in the back end. Because Joss Whedon wasn't necessarily treated all that well as a showrunner in his time. I mean,
yeah, in his time. I mean,
Firefly, Fox basically just went in and said, you know, we don't like this episode, or we're just going to shift the order of episodes around.
I mean, he got to do Buffy until he got tired of it. But yeah, Firefly was, Fox really messed with Firefly.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's had this kind of bad luck in his later career as a showrunner. But yeah, now this is his first time working outside of network. So he's going with HBO, where, you know, you just get a lot more support and creative control. So it's going to be interesting to see what he pulls off in that environment. It also means that he's not bound to the typical network TV, you know, the limitations like on violence and sexuality and language and things like that. He can kind of just do whatever he wants here, which is something that even when he went into movies hasn't really been something he's had that much freedom to do, since he's focused on like Marvel movies, which are like keenly in like the PG-13 territory.
Right.
So this could go in some interesting places that we've never seen Joss go before.
Right, exactly. And this is another big get for HBO.
Yeah. Just Joss Whedon alone, just Joss Whedon's name as a showrunner on a series for that network is a big get.
Exactly.
We have one cast member announced already for this, Laura Donnelly. She was in Outlander, and she's going to be in the new Tolkien movie, the movie about J.R.R. Tolkien, not a movie based on his books, but about his life. She's playing Amelia True, which has been described as the most reckless, impulsive, emotionally damaged hero of her time, a menace to stuffy Victorian society. She would die for the cause and kill for a drink. So that's the character description. Basically sounds like a Whedon-esque female lead.
Definitely.
I'm excited for that one, but that's the end of our list this week. So as I said, we're doing 4 of these. So this is the second one down. We're halfway through. Next week, we're going to be kind of focusing on, it's kind of a mixed bag. We're doing stuff that's mostly like modern, but like, you know, maybe comic book inspired, stuff like that, you know, comic book or otherwise inspired modern kind of stories. So that's what we're going to be doing next week for the, what could be the next Game of Thrones. And we'll go over those. But until then, this is what's coming up on the week ahead. We're recording this on Saturday, June 8th, but on Friday, June 7th, 3% returned on Netflix. Armistead Maupin's Tales of the City came to Netflix. This is a series that's had multiple versions or iterations on different networks, like over decades. And so it just gets new installments every like 15 years or something. It's like a weird kind of anthology series that way. But it's going to Netflix this time, where I think the last 2 seasons were on Showtime, I think. Designated Survivor is coming to Netflix, and it's going to be President Jack Bauer swearing and acting more mature than he could on I say mature, but I mean that in like the video game M rating sense than he was allowed to on ABC. now that the series has moved to Netflix. This Sunday, June 9th, 2019, Big Little Lies is back on HBO. That was like a huge water cooler show for its first season. I didn't watch it, but it was like, you couldn't escape. That show was being talked about everywhere. Claws returns on TNT. If you like shows like Orange is the New Black, Claws is great. Ripley's Believe It or Not is coming back to travel. You might wonder, why am I talking about Ripley Believe It or Not? Well, guess who's hosting Ripley's Believe It or Not, this iteration of the show?
Bruce Campbell.
That's right.
Because I'm looking at the notes.
Bruce Campbell alone. We talk about names mattering. Well, Bruce Campbell's name to me matters.
Bruce Campbell is great, yeah. It's a good thing they got rid of freaking Dean Cain, I guess. Fuck that guy.
Screw Dean Cain. Bruce Campbell, man. That's who
Bruce Campbell. Yeah, that's what I definitely want to see.
Also, Sugar and Toys is coming to Fuse. On Tuesday, June 11th, 2019, Pose returns to FX for its second season. On Wednesday, June 12th, Queen Sugar returns to OWN, Younger to TV Land, and Krypton to Sci-Fi before its eventual cancellation, right? I mean, clock on that one.
Krypton is taking the Gotham approach and just like doing like an origin story without like the main hero, and then instead it's like
every villain imaginable.
Yeah, throwing every villain imaginable at them. Like they got, like I saw the trailer for a new set and they got like freaking Doomsday. It's like, holy shit.
Lobo, isn't it?
They got Lobo in there. They're going in hard. It's like, holy shit.
But there's got to be a countdown clock on that, right?
Yeah.
On the cancellation, because it's Sci-Fi, and Sci-Fi has been canceling everything.
Maybe he'll get 5 seasons like Gotham.
We'll have to see. I think it's got 2 so far. I think this is its 3rd. I could be. Thursday, June 13th, Jinn comes to Netflix. That's Jinn, not Gin, as in the mythical creatures from Arabic mythology. Kakegurui comes to Netflix. That's a new anime series. Siren to Freeform. That's their Killer Mermaid series.
Yeah.
Baskets returns to FX. Strange Angel to CBS All Access. That was one of the early CBS All Access shows. So that's
wasn't it? It's like the one show that isn't Star Trek.
Yeah. when CBS All Access launched, since then they've had a few like little ones that nobody remembers, but that was one of it was basically, I think, like the 3rd show on CBS All Access. There was that Star Trek series, and then there was that, like, The Good Fight.
Yes, The Good Fight.
And Strange Angel kind of was like the first of the next group that got brought in. On Friday, June 14th, 2019, a whole lot of Netflix shows. But let's start with, Absentia comes to Amazon Prime. Too Old to Die Young to Amazon Prime. Agretsuko comes to Netflix. Have you seen that series?
No, I don't even know what it's about.
It's an anime about a panda who works at an office job and stuffs like all of her, is very internal and stuffs like all of her stress. And then she goes out and does karaoke death metal.
Nice.
And screams out all her problems. It's really funny. Layla comes to Netflix. The Alcacer Murders miniseries comes to Netflix. Trinkets comes to Netflix. That's going to be a big like YA push. That's like a very like young adults, teenage girl kind of drama series.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw a trailer for that. It's got the girl who played Negasonic Teenage Warhead in the Deadpool films.
Oh yeah.
In the lead, and it's also got Alex Mack in a small role, apparently.
So that's coming in the Netflix. That's going to be like, it's not necessarily matching our base, like what we would like what listen to the podcast would watch.
Yeah, it's a teenage girl drama. Unless
expect it to be something you'll hear about,
Yeah, it's a teenage girl drama, unless there's like a huge freaking swerve that that the trailer doesn't hint at. It's a teenage girl drama.
Yeah. They also got Unite 42 coming to Netflix. Not really sure what that is. But then Jessica Jones comes to Netflix.
The last season. And it's interesting because the Netflix
Marvel series.
It's interesting because the Netflix trailer says the last season, which is not a courtesy they extended to any of the other Marvel series last seasons.
Yes.
They never got a trailer. They never officially got a trailer labeled the last season. Jessica Jones gets that.
Well, this is also, it's officially the end of the Netflix Marvel universe.
Yes. And we knew this would be the end.
Yeah, so that's kind of a big deal there.
Yeah.
Also on that day, Los Spookies comes to HBO. That may sound like it's just some HBO Latin series, but this is Fred Armisen's new comedy. So if you watch him, Saturday Night Live alumni, he actually has a really good show on Amazon called Forever. That's really funny. But Los Spookies on HBO, that's his new series. And then Jet comes to Cinemax, which I believe is named for Joan Jett, but I don't think it's about Joan Jett. I'm not sure. It's female led. I think I've seen like one teaser for it and I wasn't really sure what was going on. But that's it for what's coming up in the week ahead. Next week, we're going to take a look at some more upcoming shows that might just be the next Game of Thrones. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about like comic book stuff. We're going to be talking about stuff like Watchmen. We're going to be talking about Lovecraft Country. We're going to be talking about The Rook, Lock and Key, The Continental, which is the John Wick related TV series. Those are some of the ones we're going to be talking about next week. But until then, you can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. So thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very